It is our pleasure to be here with you once again on this day of your time and space as we come together to co-create the experience of our collective choosing. This is a unique experience, yet becoming more and more prominent in the experience of human beings at this time in your history, let's say. There's a growingness of openness to allow such transmissions to transpire based upon the idea of acceptance, based upon the idea of tolerance, based upon the idea of growth, based upon the idea of manifestation into a realm of, let's say, a higher vibration. So we come to you with gratitude, we come to you with a mutual respect, we come to you through the idea of love, we come to you through your call to us that the time was now appropriate for these interactions to come into play in your realities. This won't necessarily be a reality for many, but in time, that too will change. This will become commonplace, interacting with those from the unseen world as you become more seen through the change in your perceptions, through the change in your vibratory experience, through the change in your growth as a spiritual being. These interactions will become more pronounced. They will become more, let's say, challenging to current systems. As this new system, as this new paradigm, as this new understanding of a different reality becomes an experience, becomes part of the experience of millions, soon to be billions on your planet. When we say soon, we use this loosely. This will be determined by yourselves through your change, through your growth, through your momentum or lack thereof. Soon is a very, let's say, relative term, but nonetheless a direction in which you are all moving. This should make you happy. This should make you proud of yourselves for getting to this point. Yes, it is fine to feel proud of yourselves. We encourage this. This is not negative as some of you may think. There's nothing wrong with accepting the pleasures in your own part of the creation. This is something that all of you are well aware of. It strikes a chord within. The knowingness of your integral, individual aspects that integrate and mingle with the collective, creating an experience as a whole. Every one of you plays an integral part, plays a lead role in your own way. None being better than the other or less than another. All being equal in this recipe of spiritual living, of spiritual growth, of spiritual refinement, of spiritual enhancement, of being a spiritual being. Individually yet collectively at the same time, creating balance within that then creates balance within the global community, which then creates balance within a more universal collective. Suffice to say, how you interact and define yourself as a spiritual human being does in fact play a humongous, that's an interesting word.
It is.
Part. Therefore, as you move into your next experience, into each moment in time, how do you wish to present yourself? How do you wish to be experiencing that situation? How do you wish to move forward or perhaps remain stagnant in that experience? How do you prefer to be? There is no right or wrong. All of them contribute to an outcome of sorts. But how do you prefer to experience life? This is the question that we encourage all of you to ask regularly. moment to moment, if you have to, as a reminder that this is your choice, this is your experience. Yes, you are working in conjunction with the whole, and the whole does influence you and your energetic vibration just as you do to theirs, yet you have more power within that fluctuation than you may think. We encourage you to bring forth any questions that you may like us to possibly clarify for you, with the understanding that you may or may not receive the answers that you are looking for. So may we suggest coming into these interactions with less expectation than you would normally with your human friends.
Thank you for having me today. I do have a few questions I'd like to ask. When you talk about a universal connection and everything, do you think in that sense all of our paths are intertwined as well? Or do we have a common goal, or is that somewhat individual as well?
Well, it's a combination and mixture of both. Ultimately, it is a whole, it's a one experience. Yet that one has chosen to experience itself as one, as a multitude of different experiences, different beings, in a quantum level that wouldn't even possibly be able to be recognized within the human brain as a concept, if that makes sense. So the basis of all creation has a common goal to live at the highest possible vibration, which is pure bliss, pure peacefulness, as you would describe them in your language. How you in particular have chosen at this time, in this space that we are meeting, to experience this idea of a piece of the whole as a human being in this time is a very specific point in time, but very relative to all points in time simultaneously. While you have chosen to experience this point in time as this human being, as this aspect of all creation, which is divinity in its purest form, while you are doing this, so too are a multitude of other beings. Again, a number that would be impossible to even put into your perception at this time. There really is nothing that represents the grandness of that. But nonetheless, the idea being that all creation is experiencing a somewhat unique experience, yet moving in the momentum, in the direction of a group, let's say, of others. Not everyone moves in the same direction at all given time. Some do. There are some civilizations that do, yes. But here we are talking about your own as a human being on the planet Earth. This is where we like you to concentrate your attention for now. Master this, and then perhaps move on to the bigger picture, if you will. But it is good to know certain things. It's not necessary to go through the entire process of civilizations.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. In terms of being on Earth and everything, and focusing my attention here for now, was this my first home, or our first home as humans, or is this like a training ground in a way, or
Do you mean specifically for you right now, in this location on planet Earth, or are you being more general in terms of humanity as a civilization?
yeah, more in terms of humanity, and like, is there significance?
Yes, this is the first planet that human beings have civilized upon. It perhaps will not be the last, and there have been certain let's say, movements, experiences for short periods on other planets, but none that would constitute inhabiting another planet.
Okay.
Does this make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
This was essentially your birth planet. This is your birth planet. This is your planet. Of course, it does, in a sense, belong to all of creation, as there really is no this or that belonging to him or her, let's say, on a grand picture. But for all intents and purposes, for you to understand and comprehend what we mean here, it is technically your planet to do with as you wish. And you have for many, many, many years.
So kind of going back to one of the earlier questions, the universal connection and power and energy, is there a good way to tap into that, or are we always tapped into that? Like if we need to recharge or...
Well, you were always tapped into it. Pardon us for cutting you short, but we felt as though you may just repeat yourself over and over, and we understand what you're trying to say. And we say that in the most loving of ways. You are always tapped into it on some level. That's why it's called a reconnection. It's not something that needs to be connected to, per se, because you are all connected to it. You cannot be. That is impossible, which is why we say the word impossibility does exist. It is impossible to not be connected to it. What happens is, over the course of lifetimes, there becomes a disconnect. Now, this word could be misconstrued. This does not mean that disconnected means never to be reconnected again. It means to be moving further away from that connection, to have a cloudy connection, to perhaps be trying to move water through a plugged pipe. This is an analogy that for many of you, you then begin to visualize the idea of a connection, of an alignment, keeping your lines of communication free and clear of debris. What kind of debris? Well, there's a variety of debris. There's the debris of the mind. The words that float through your mind that then interface with the soul, that interface with your other areas of wholeness, your energetic field, your magnetic field, your electromagnetic field. As these begin to interface with one another, that interfaceization is what then creates the experience. So the debris of the mind is therefore directly influencing the experience. Then we have the debris of the physical body, the physical toxins that you eat, that you breathe, that you witness. These are also infiltrating into your entire experience. Some of which are more on a subconscious level, that would be of the mind. The physical signs being more of a conscious level, how you would describe consciousness, being aware of. So therefore, how do you keep that connection clean? Well, you start with the physical body. You start with a clean system. You do what it takes to have that clean system. For many of you, it's nothing more than believing that you are surrounded by a clean system, regardless of what you're inhaling, regardless of what you're digesting. And for others, it becomes more of a challenge because you see the negativity in your food, in your products, in your transportation means, in your environment, in the air you breathe. But this becomes more of a personal experience. So refining that for yourselves is an entirely different story here. What we are talking about is finding that alignment, finding that connection, and the best ways to do that. Well, let's start with a clean mind, a clean body, and then knowing that this connection is indeed possible, that it is there for you to draw from, that it is there for you to benefit from, it is there for you to grow within, to experience life from a multitude of other angles. increasing your expansion of your life, increasing your idea of what life is all about. Not only as a physical human being, but also as a non-physical, eternal, divine creature.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
You are pretty awesome.
For each of our the energies that we have, should we be guarded of this energy or be more open? And is that
What do you think?
part of me thinks for different circumstances, but I think that it should be open and let
Yes,
more
well, you're
so
right.
than protected.
Yes, you were right. There's really no need to create blockages from anything. Within that creation is the idea of fear, the idea of resistance, the idea of there is something out there that's going to get me.
Definitely. No, that makes sense. I feel that too. And I really resonated true with a clean connection. I've never, like that is something I think I'll hold with me for a long time and try to practice. Keeping the connection clean in mind and body.
Yes, well, it's an integral part of finding that connection. It's not necessary, really, but let's not confuse you here. We want to keep you focused on that idea. But beyond that idea, which you will then reach through a clean body, through a clean mind, through your personal growth, you will then begin to realize that you really could have skipped all those steps entirely. But we do not feel that right now is the time to attempt to challenge yourself to that big of a step. There is an array of lessons to be learned through the process of creating a clean system, all systems, and reaping the rewards from that. And that is an experience that you would perhaps miss should you simply jump to that level. It would be a different experience.
Like
Food is very tasty. We understand the loveliness of food. At a future date of your experience, food will not be required to the same degree that you all experience that idea now, but there is celebration within the idea of food. Food is an integral aspect of being a human being. Don't you agree?
Definitely.
It is used for ceremony. It is used for ritual. It is used for daily consumption simply for the need to survive. Therefore, when you think about the imperativeness of food, how could it not be just as imperative for you to be consuming food that is more conducive to cleaning the physical body, cleaning the tool that you have to experience this life? This is a tool to you. How do you care for your tool? If you look at it that way, it becomes more manageable from a psychological level. It is merely a tool. Keep it lubricated. Keep the parts moving freely, without resistance, without grinding, without wear and tear. Unless, of course, you don't want to do that. That is up to you. Next.
So, when talking about things ringing true, like with what you were speaking about last question, like for example, if I get shivers within me when I hear some idea or with something you say, is that universal? Is that for other people? Is that are there kind of common physical traits that are signs that we should listen to? Or
yes, there are general physical signs that manifest in the human body based upon experiences, based upon emotions, based upon connecting to the innate self that tells you certain things. But the degree to which a individual experiences these general traits is based upon their connection, based upon their reconnection, based upon their belief and trust in the universal divine intelligence. It's through this knowing, through this belief, that alignment kicks in, that the connection is clear, that the connection is moving through you unobstructed. It's in this place where you then tap into your greater self, where you tap into that part of you that is wrapping itself around source creation. If you look at this in a linear way, as a human being, you are very far removed from that. Your mediator, let's say, is your higher self that acts as a go-to, as the in-between, the human that you're experiencing, and source creation, that from which you came from. Your higher self is the mediator, that sits in the middle, sending and receiving information. It's a store hub, let's say, of all of creation, of your specific creations in conjunction with all of creation, sits in this, for linear purposes, bubble of energy. That is what you refer to as the higher self. So tapping into that higher self is what then brings to you an abundance of knowledge and an abundance of wisdom. And in part, how you experience that wisdom shows itself to you, to all of you, in different physical forms. Shivers, tightness, sweating, shaking, throwing up, the opposite. So how does your own unique body present itself to you through your higher self? What is the higher self then representing through those physical signs? Many of you know the answers to these questions intuitively, so write them down. What feeling do I generally experience when I am feeling shivery and cold when I shouldn't be, based upon the weather? What feeling is generating within me? What emotion is in motion?
I really like that. I think definitely should be more in tune with our emotion, and I think our physical manifestations of that emotion too. I think
emotions are the engine to understanding how your physical part of you, the human being part of you, is connected and interfacing with the non-physical part of you. Your emotions are a gauge to how you're balancing those equations. They are meant to be used as such. Many of you simply don't understand your emotions to the degree that tapping into the true usefulness of them is then possible. Many of you grew up not receiving any information, period, on what emotions are, how they may come about, what triggers those emotions, what facial and body expressions match certain emotions, how to even express those safely, knowing that this is a normal aspect of being a human being. And many of you grew up with the understanding that expressing your emotions is basically a faux pas. Many of you. Now, if you are living your life from this standpoint of not expressing yourself emotionally as a human being, then how possibly do you move into the idea that these emotions are there to serve you? And it's through the movement of learning to express and to understand and to process those emotions that you move now into the idea of less fluctuation in those emotions. But there's a difference between suppressing them and experiencing them to the point where it seems as though you're not expressing them, if this makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's an eye-opening way to look at that, and explains a lot my own personal history and how I react to things, and because I'm pretty guarded, and definitely true in terms of being raised and bottling emotions and that type of thing.
It was the way of the times. It has been for many years. It was thought as being weak, as being vulnerable to express one's emotions. But that is now changing and shifting and will not become part of the normal experience for children being raised, as their parents will not think this way anymore either. But there is a transitional period. There are generations that are still moving out of that idea and have to learn now to develop those skills at a older age, let's say, whereas as a child it would become more natural because you're actually in the state of being more connected to your more natural self for simple purposes of age. As a young child, you're closer to that original connection. As an adult, you become farther and farther away, so it becomes a little bit more challenging to learn to express those emotions. Yet with the will and the want to do so, it becomes also a very fun experience.
Kind of jumping off topic to a different question, but regarding my own practice, when I do meditation, sometimes I like to travel to different places. Are these places real, or do they hold any significance? And is that a good way to transfer energy to people that you want to give to, or is there better ways?
Well, first of all, let's clarify. Every experience is significant, regardless of whether you feel as though you're simply experiencing it in your head. This is all in your head. This is all an illusion when you break it right down to the nitty-gritty of it all. Therefore, your experiences in your meditation are just as realistic as this experience that you're experiencing right now. And wherever you choose to visit is of significance. Wherever you choose to visit, whomever you choose to spend your time with, regardless of whether you are in this reality or that reality, is of importance to you and to many others. Therefore, yes, those places, those experiences are very real. So enjoy them. It's cheap airfare.
Well, thank you very much. I felt the same way, and definitely is eye-opening. Just one more thing I'd like to add, I guess. Most of my questions are done, but just as we were starting, I felt a great presence from my late grandfather, almost as if he was over my shoulder, kind of observing goings on right now, and just humbling and very grateful to be here today and to have some of these questions answered, and just new insights into the life I'm living and the journey I'm on.
Yes, well, and we reciprocate that love to you. You have to you available at all times the energies of your ancestors. The energies of your ancestors, not just from physical reality, but also from the non-physical realm. There is no exception to this rule for any of you. You simply cannot get away from it, so you may as well start to enjoy it.
It's funny that you mentioned, sorry, one more question, just because something you mentioned actually was something that I forgot to ask about the accumulated power of our ancestors. So do you think that power, do you think that's accumulated experience and knowledge, and do you think that we have like their lives and past lives as well as our own?
All of creation is accumulated knowledge, is accumulated wisdom, regardless of what piece of the puzzle you are talking about. They are all a collective experience building upon one another, creating momentum. Carry on.
Oh, that's pretty much everything. Thank you so much. A few of those truths brought some tears to my eyes, so thank you guys again.
It was our pleasure.